Welcome to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm Jeff Cranston. Today, I'll be talking about a familiar topic to regular listeners at least, and that's the ongoing efforts for a study and pilot of road user charges here in Michigan. So first, I spoke with Barbara Rohde, who is the executive director of the Mileage-Based User Fee Alliance in Washington, D.C., about their efforts, their membership, the advocacy that they do on this topic, and the efforts to try to educate people about why we need to shift away from the more than 100-year-old fuel tax as the major source of revenue to fund roads and bridges, to charge people by the miles that they drive, and that's a true user fee. So she has a lot of interesting things to say. And then I spoke with Patrick McCarthy, who is the finance director at the Michigan Department of Transportation, and he's helping to oversee the process to implement a study and pilot of a road user charge system here in Michigan. This was required in legislation passed last year. It had some advocates in both chambers, and so Patrick is following up on that, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about the process and what that entails. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. As mentioned, we're back with Barbara Rohde, who is the executive director of the Mileage-Based User Fee Alliance. I'm always tempted to say association, but it's actually an alliance. Barbara, thank you very much for taking time to talk about this issue.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Jeff.
So tell me first about the history of the MBUFA, or you call it MBUFA. Is that how you say it?
MBUFA, right.
MBUFA.
A lot of people say it sounds like a dance. Let's do the MBUFA. But I will tell you, the name came about because the chairman of the committee at that time said he thought that would be a good name. So we said, of course, it will be a good name. And we, whatever you say, it sounds good to me. And then he said, and then we're a 501c3, and we got approved by the IRS on our first I guess our first proposal, which I hear is pretty unusual. And I said, I'm not going through that again. So we have many people who said, well, we can rename it this and rename it that. And I go, no, we're going to stay with this name. But how this came about, I don't think anybody believes that Washington needs one more association or alliance or whatever. But I was working on a project in Minnesota at the time, and Jim Whitty was working on the project in Oregon, who really was the leader of all the mileage-based issues at that time. And, we'd run into each other as we were going in and out of offices looking for money to start this project. And we finally decided that, we both had worked on the Hill for a number of years, Capitol Hill, and we decided it would be good for us to, to form an alliance so that we're not working against each other, but working for each other. So that is what we did in 2015, 2010. I'll tell you, the years go by. And really it took I think it was 2016 when the FAST Act, we really worked on getting money for pilots. That was our main concern, to be able to allow states to have money to get started. So that is really what we did. And we started off pretty small, but we've continued to grow and really try to shape this issue in the United States. But we also have international members. So they're looking at what the United States is going to be doing too.
So what have you seen in terms of an evolution of thought with congressional members, as you've talked about this now for this many years? Because I think, one of the things I say a lot, and I don't know if it sinks in, but nothing else costs the same as it did the last time the fuel tax was increased, but yet we expect that to still cover what it used to.
That's right.
As if there's no inflation, as if there's no increase in wages and increase in costs of materials. So when you talk about this as a replacement, as not an addition, but a replacement, a true user fee,
right.
How does that resonate?
Well, I think that it really has changed over the years. when we first started in Buffa, people were like, "What? You pay by the miles, instead of the gas tax." I mean, it took a lot of time, and we did a lot of meetings. I think in the first 4 years, we met with 100 members of Congress, which is a lot of people to do meetings with and educate their staffs and just give them some background. Now, some people, of course, are no, this will never work in my district or my state or whatever. But what I have seen over the years, there really has been an evolution of thought. People understand that we don't have enough money to be able to, be able to keep up our transportation system the way it needs to be kept up. And I think they really are looking for ways to be able to do this. Now, I do believe with Hawaii, mandating a road using charge right now, that will give us some more information of how a state reacts to this and how we will go about it. But I have seen, there are still people that are very skeptical about privacy and how this could work and, rural areas, et cetera. But in general, most people believe we need to find some alternative because people are not voting for a gas tax increase as of right now, at least. I mean, they might in the future, but as of right now. But that's not the only culprit. The other culprit is just the way life is going. And with hybrid vehicles, much higher mileage of just regular vehicles and electric vehicles, even though we've heard a few downturns in the past month or two about electric vehicles. They're still, moving along at a pretty good clip.
Especially elsewhere in the world.
Exactly. Oh, I mean, in Norway, we are looking we're talking to Iceland right now because they're the next nation. New Zealand has mandated that they are going to a total road charge system. They've had it for heavy vehicles and diesel vehicles before, but now Iceland has done it. And we believe that there'll be several countries in Europe before too long that will be doing it. So yes, there's a lot of information from outside of the nation right now that we're trying to glean and get to people.
So you raised Hawaii, and then you mentioned a couple of island nations. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the two things we hear the most. You already mentioned privacy, and you've got ready arguments, ready answers for that question. Mm-hmm. But then also this idea of interstate travel and how you deal with that, especially a state like Michigan. There's 10 million people, but the vast majority of them are in the southern part of the state near the border of two other states. So there's a mindset that people from Indiana and Ohio will be, milking the system somehow. So talk about that.
I was in the Eastern Transportation Coalition, which, is pretty much states and cities along the East Coast. They did a pilot, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. And they invited as many people to participate in it. Now, I must admit, Jeff, that I was a participant myself. And when I plugged that little device into my Jeep, I was like, wow, they're going to know where I'm going. So I will say, that was a thought I had. But then I pulled out, and I only pretty much drive on the weekends here in D.C. And, it got to be, I was fascinated with how accurate the information was when I'd log in on Monday morning on the computer. It was down to the mile marker on the interstate of where I was at. So, I think the technology is there. A lot of people are very concerned about that. But what I saw myself was that it was just pinpoint accurate on, because it shows where you brake, et cetera. I'm sure other things do this too, but where it showed where I was at. And when I crossed the line from Virginia into the District of Columbia, and it was just really pinpoint accurate. At least the device that I had was very, very good. Now, I'm sure there's going to be issues, there's going to be issues as we go along. But that's the reason we have to keep doing these pilots and do more. We're very proud of what Michigan is going to be doing. That's going to be a major state pilot for us to be gleaning information from. But we also need to have more pilots that do intrastate, because we need that kind of information for people to feel confident that these systems really will be working, and that, Washington State and Oregon did a small one, and they found it was accurate. It was only play money, so to speak. It wasn't that they actually had cash going back and forth, as I remember it correctly. But we need much more than that, and also international. Because one of the things that I know that Michigan has a lot of Canadian traffic that's coming into your state at different times. So getting that kind of information is going to be incredibly helpful to us as we keep moving through this.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mentioned the two other border U.S. states, but our friends in Canada, there's a lot of cross-border traffic, both for work and for leisure, and that's a really important point you made. So I guess talk about how you address those privacy concerns and what can be done with the technology to guarantee that nobody's keeping data. People are skeptical. So even if you tell them that, and even if you show them, that the law says that a company can't do that, they still don't necessarily believe it. So talk about that.
That is really true. And let me tell you, the biggest discussion that I hear on the Hill right now is who gets the data. I mean, that is really, really a hot topic. I mean, is it the federal government? Yeah, it's incredibly valuable. So I would say that's even higher than privacy right now. But I think you have to give people choices. I mean, you're going to always have people that are going to say, I do not want anybody to know where I'm going, period. And for those people, they can pay a flat fee. I mean, I just believe that you're going to have some of that. However, what I am seeing is that as we're getting younger members of Congress, younger staffers, this is just part of their life. I mean, you do a Google map, and it has, allow once that you where you're at. And, that's just part of their life right now. They don't even really think about it that much. And I think that, that's what I'm seeing is a difference on the Hill. But for us, what we're saying is that we really believe that, that we need to give people choices. But what I did when the other thing is that there is some technology that I have heard about. Now, this was not part of the one that I was a part of, but that you can you can turn off the location and just do the mileage. Or if you have an odometer situation, that is still another situation. That is what Hawaii is doing. And they found it very, very successful. But each state is very unique on how they gather data and how they, provide it to, to their customers, very frankly. And I think that what we are just saying is that we believe technology right now can almost do, provide anything, even turning off your location and being able to give you just the mileage that you're doing. But if that happens, then the question of, if you drive into Indiana, if you drive into Ohio, how does Michigan know that the miles were done in Michigan if you're not, showing where people are at? And those are the kinds of questions that I think some of these pilots are going to be doing right now.
So setting aside Hawaii, that is prepared to actually mandate this, what state in the mainland is probably farthest down the road?
Well, Virginia is pretty good because they gave that as an option, to people, and they've had incredible signups. I mean, it's like I can't remember the last time I saw the numbers. I think it was 20,000 people that they would give the option if people wanted to just do their regular fee or do a mileage-based fee. The other one that's moving really fast on this is Vermont. They are another situation where they have a mandate primarily on electric vehicles now, but it's like Hawaii. It's going to be staged. And of course, Utah is a major leader in this in the nation, and they've tested many things. And of course, they're mainly electric vehicles, hybrids, etc. But I would say right now, what I'm hearing is Vermont is probably the next one that's kind of been under the radar that will pop up pretty quickly.
And per capita, there are a lot of EVs in Vermont.
There are, exactly.
But I have talked to Utah officials about it, and I'm still amazed. And Utah, obviously smaller than Michigan population-wise, but a little bit similar in that you've got really one heavily metropolitan area, and then the rest of it's pretty rural. So how is it they've gotten so many people to sign on in Utah, do you think?
Well, they took their time. And one of the things that I think they've done very well with is that they had a very strategic program, and they had very strong support from their governor, and they've just been adding to it at each time. And Virginia is similar, even though they are not as I don't want to say they're not as public about it. But one of the things that they did, and we had them on an Mbufa call right before they launched, talking about their communications. And they took an entire year before they started this program, working with reporters, because giving them information, having them see different sites like this. So I think both Utah and Virginia did an excellent job on communication, kind of outbound of beginning their projects. And that really helped. It's important that the press really understand this, because we've seen some instances where they don't, and then just some misinformation is quoted.
I think it's really interesting. I've learned a lot about the Reason Foundation's support for this last few years. I've spoken often with Baruch Feigenbaum, your friend and mine at the Reason Foundation, and that a free market think tank advocacy group is aligned with so many people from both sides of the spectrum. And this is one of those things that brings people together. And I'm sure you see that in your conversations in Washington.
Absolutely. And this is not an issue that you just count on Democrats to be for and Republicans to be against. It's really impressive. Probably the strongest supporter we've had in over 15 years has been the current chairman of the Transportation Committee, who is a Republican from suburban Kansas City. I mean, not a place I would think would be, supporting mileage fees. But what we are hearing is that a lot of the freshman members on that committee are wary, I will say, of the continual transfer of funds from the general fund to support the Highway Trust Fund. So I think that he really is trying to look for new ways to be able to do this, and we are very hopeful. We have put in a request for a lot of funds to do regional pilots. We'll see if we're successful on that or not. But we really believe that this is an issue that both Democrats and Republicans both agree on and disagree on. But we've seen support from both sides.
And 3 members of the Michigan delegation are on that committee. And so it'll be interesting to talk to them more about that.
Absolutely.
Since you made that point about the trust fund, I think I mentioned on a call with your board yesterday that a lawmaker just a couple of days ago, asked if Michigan is still a donor state. Nobody's been a donor state now for 18 years probably.
It's been a long time. Yeah. It's yeah.
Talk about that concept and why the trust fund is being propped up.
I think that I was talking to committee staff about this, and literally what the Reason Foundation and other foundations are saying. I mean, it is a staggering number that's going to have to be transferred. And when I do my talks, I have one slide that shows the various trust funds and who's in trouble. Medicare, Social Security, all the trust funds we all hear about. Actually, the Highway Trust Fund is the worst off of all. But I said, I don't want to be up against Social Security for both, on the Hill. Let me tell you, they don't want to get, people upset with getting their payments. But it just shows that the Highway Trust Fund really is in trouble. However, most of these members don't get a lot of time to spend on this. And I can see why you got that question about a donor state. I mean, it's been years since I've heard that argument going on. But again, it is just a matter of trying to keep educating people on where we're at with this. Now, they do know that we're in financial grave situation for the trust fund. But I think most people just keep thinking, the money can come from the general fund. We just have an unlimited supply. But that's not going to be the case this year. We're going to have some rein in of the situation. And in our meeting yesterday, we heard from a former staff director that they really want to trim some of the programs. And I mean, some of the grant programs, not like the highway, our traditional programs, but I mean, that's going to have some pushback too, because there are people that nothing goes into this legislation without somebody wanting it. And, somebody's going to be pushing back on each one of those.
But there is a lot to be said for focusing more on formula programs than grant programs.
Yeah,
sure.
That is true, especially in these economic times. You're absolutely right, Jeff.
Yeah. So, real quickly before we wrap this up, going back to how we have these conversations and the education that's necessary, you've kind of been conducting your own focus groups for some time, and you grew up in what it sounds like could be described as the ruralest of rural America.
That's true. I did.
Talk about those conversations.
Well, I grew up in a very small town. I grew up on a farm in Pettibone, North Dakota. And I was on a panel one day, and somebody in the chat said I used to hunt there. I mean, this was a Philadelphia group. I was just so surprised. Anyway, but whenever I talk about what I do in Washington, and I say that, I'm the executive director of a program that's going to look at trying to charge fees per miles. All of these farmers, everybody, 100% say, oh, that's going to kill us because we have to drive 40 miles to the doctor. We have to drive, 30 miles to do this. And, we're on the roads all the time. And so I look at them and they all have big pickups. Every one of them that I've talked to at least,
sure.
I have a big hunkin' pickup. And I say to them, what do you get with that pickup? 12 miles a gallon? Most of them get about 12, sometimes 15 if it's not, too good. And I say, you're paying more than anybody. And we have studies that show that rural drivers will do better under this program than the traditional people everybody think, the urban drivers. But it's really an issue to try to be able to, bring out. But we have, I believe, Colorado, when they did their pilot, they had the Farm Bureau on their advisory board. And, I think one of the things I've always recommended is try to get some farm groups to start talking about this. Because usually when I talk to people back there, I can't say I've had 100% converts, but I've had a few people that say, okay, well, I got to think about this more. This kind of makes sense.
That's the best you could hope for coming out of those initial conversations.
Exactly, Jeff. So we'll see.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much. We could talk about this forever, and I'm sure we'll talk again, but I really appreciate your insight and your passion for this important topic.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Please stay tuned. We'll be back with more Talking Michigan Transportation right after this.
Even with the best planning, backups and traffic congestion can occur during road construction. This can pose hazardous situations for both motorists and construction workers, particularly when drivers are distracted. Motorists are more likely than workers to be killed or injured in work zone-related incidents. Additionally, the leading causes of all work zone-related crashes are distracted driving and speeding. So it's crucial to do your part in ensuring the safety of both drivers and focusing on your most important task, safe driving. Slow down and stay focused.
So Patrick McCarthy, who I introduced in the earlier segment, but I should say needs no introduction. He's been on the podcast several times and does a great job of explaining complicated financial things that are imperative to Department of Transportation and all the things that go on there. Patrick, I wanted to talk to you again about the road user charge study and pilot. It's kind of your baby. It's been a lot of fits and starts, but the process is now finally underway. Could you talk about that and what the process entails?
Sure, Jeff. Thanks for having me back on the podcast. As you're aware, the department tried a couple of years ago to secure a federal grant for a road user charge pilot and study. We unfortunately were unsuccessful with that effort. But in our 26 budget, we were provided the funding and the kind of the requirement to go forth and do a pilot and study of road user charges. We've created a technical advisory committee, which is made up of industry folks from both the side of the funds that will utilize the dollars, like MDOT and the County Road Association and the Michigan Municipal League, as well as industry partners that will help us to deliver on our transportation network, like MITA and ACEC, as well as some other people with interest in the transition away from a fuel tax towards a road user charge.
Let me play the acronym card. MITA is the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, and ACEC is the American Council of
Engineering Consultants. Yes. So, yeah, thank you. We're nothing if not an acronym-filled department.
Yes, for sure.
So we created the technical advisory committee, and we had our first meeting here a couple of weeks ago now. We have prepared a request for proposals and put the advertisement out to the public for bringing on a consultant to help us throughout this entire effort of the pilot and the study that we're undertaking. So that advertisement is set to close at the end of the month, at which point then we will select a consultant to bring on board that will help us with all of the aspects of the road user charge effort that we're undertaking.
Remind me, because I lost track of this, was the technical advisory committee part of the legislation, or is that just a good practice that we know from other states that have done this?
It was a requirement of the boilerplate, but I would also say it was a good idea to have kind of a steering committee overseeing the efforts that we're undertaking.
I don't know if you can reel them off the top of your head. Maybe you can. Can you talk about the various members?
I can do my best. So we've got members from ACEC and MITA, County Road Association and MML. We've got internal State Department representation from MDOT and Department of State and Department of Treasury and DTMB for the privacy and security of the data that we will need to collect to do a road user charge. We have representation from university, Michigan State University as a member on board. And we have our John Paracchio, who was a big advocate of road user charges and tolling throughout the nation. But after we invited him to join our technical advisory committee, he is also now one of our State Transportation Commission commissioners.
Yes, and another frequent guest on the podcast. I love having him on to talk about this very topic because he's been involved in it for so long and speaks very knowledgeably. So that's a good rundown. I think you mentioned that they have their work cut out for them. I think we need to be very clear that it is an advisory committee, so they're not ultimately making some decision about whether ultimately Michigan does shift to some kind of road user charge system. But their input will be very valuable as you try to shepherd this actual study and pilot. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned from the other states that have already been doing this?
Sure. I think that the biggest thing that we've learned from talking to other states is the fact that you can't spend enough time on the public outreach and the public engagement and education, as well as trying to make sure that the folks that someday will need to actually handle passing legislation, our legislative partners, are engaged on this discussion as well. we intend to do very robust outreach around the state, trying to reach all of the people that will be impacted by a road user charge, the urban areas, the rural areas, all of the citizens of the state, as well as I think we need to have conversations and try to figure out how we manage interstate travel and the sharing of data and revenue collected among the different states as people travel across our state lines.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's a complication that always comes up, but with technology, there are definitely ways to do that. And I think what we've heard, what you and I have both heard from other states, is that a lot of times, oftentimes, as part of that engagement outreach process, as soon as you're able to spend a few minutes with the people who have all those questions and they come to understand how it works, how it would work, the privacy safeguards, the methods of making sure that we do capture out of state traffic, that they change their minds or at least become more open-minded to it.
That's the understanding that we have, and some of the surveys before and after some of these educational outreaches reinforce that the more that you can explain this to people, the less resistance they have to the idea of a road user charge once they understand what it truly means. And I also don't think people really understand how much they're currently paying to utilize the transportation networks around the state. Paying at the pump is really essentially a road user charge. It's just that you're paying it per gallon that you're filling up your car with right now.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, for more than 100 years, from the beginning of really of autos proliferating, it was a user fee model, and the fuel tax worked very well for that. But we've known now for some time that that's not keeping up. And that's even before hybrids and EVs came along. It was because our vehicles are getting better mileage, and that's a good thing for the environment, but they weigh, roughly the same as they did 50 years ago. And so they're just as hard on the roads.
Sure.
I guess that's not really a question.
I was nodding my head and agreeing with everything that you were saying.
Yeah. No, that's good. This is pretty much what I wanted to accomplish with this part. So as always, I appreciate it, and we'll be following closely as this proceeds.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate your help. We'll definitely be engaging with your folks, both from communications and governmental affairs, as we navigate these waters to, like we said, at the end of this, we want to have a very good product that provides a compelling story for the people that have to actually put this into legislation and roll it out as a solution, not just a pilot or a study.
Yeah, that's really well said. Good point. Well, thank you, Patrick.
Yep. Thank you, Jeff.
I'd like to thank you once more for tuning in to Talking Michigan Transportation. You can find show notes and more on Apple Podcasts or Buzzsprout. I also want to acknowledge the talented people who help make this a reality each week, starting with Randy Debler, who skillfully edits the audio, Jesse Ball, who proofs the content, Courtney Bates, who posts the podcast to various platforms, and Jackie Salinas, who transcribes the audio to make it accessible to all.